The most dangerous people in your life are never the ones who show up sword in hand. They're the ones who smile, lean in, and quietly rot your peace from the inside. Toxic people, manipulators, emotional parasites who feed on your kindness, your need to explain, your urge to defend yourself. They don't just hurt you once, they drain you slowly, conversation by conversation, until you start doubting your own sanity more than you doubt their behavior. And most people make the same fatal mistake. They confront them directly and walk straight into an ambush. They argue. They raise their voice. They try to prove they're right, prove they're good, prove they're not the problem. And in doing so, they lose exactly what the toxic person is trying to take: emotional control. Machiavelli would never step into that kind of fight. He understood something most people never learn. The fool argues. The strategist watches. This is the first cold law for dealing with toxic people. Do not meet them in noise. Meet them in silence. Silence is not weakness. Silence is surveillance. Think of a hunter. The hunter doesn't roar across the field to announce he's coming. He doesn't shout his intentions to the animal he's tracking. He sinks into the shadow, heart steady, eyes sharp, breath controlled. He waits. He studies. He learns. You must become that hunter. With a toxic person, your first job is not to react. Your first job is to watch. Let them talk. Let them over-explain. Let them act out their little theater. They can't help themselves. They will show you everything. Their insecurity, their need for control, their hunger for validation, their favorite weapons. Every insult, every guilt trip, every subtle dig is a confession disguised as an attack. But here is where most people fail. They take the bait. They defend. They justify. They explain. And with every emotional response, they hand over more data, more leverage, more power. You must resist that urge. You must become still. Your silence is not absence, it's a notebook. Every time they speak, you mark a pattern. Every time they switch tone, you mark a trigger. Every time they play the victim, you mark a weakness. You're not avoiding conflict. You're mapping the battlefield. Because toxic people are not strong, they are rehearsed. They've been running the same script on people for years. The moment you stop reacting like everyone else, you stop being easy to control. Picture this. They come at you with accusations, twisting reality, baiting you to explode. They expect you to fight for your name, beg to be understood, drown with them in emotional chaos. Instead, you go quiet, not confused, not submissive, just still. Your eyes steady, your breathing calm. Your words reduced to what is necessary, if anything at all. That stillness terrifies them, because a toxic person lives off your emotional movement. They feel powerful when you flinch. They feel important when you explain. They feel superior when you lose control. When you don't give them any of that, you don't just confuse them, you expose them. Their performance now has no scene partner. Their script has no audience. Their drama hangs in the air with nowhere to land. Silence is not passive. Silence is active calculation. While they're busy performing, you're busy observing. Who do they try to impress? Who do they turn into a weapon? Where do they lie so often they start believing it? In that quiet, something crucial happens. They reveal the blueprint of their own destruction, and they don't even know you're looking. But make no mistake, this law requires discipline. Your ego will want to interrupt. Your pride will want to correct. Your anger will want to explode. You will feel that burning in your chest, that urge to set the record straight. That's the trap. Because the moment you step into their arena, raised voices, emotional chaos, point scoring, you have already lost. You are now playing their game with their rules on their favorite terrain. Machiavelli would whisper one sentence in your ear: "Do not fight where the enemy is strongest." So, instead of screaming, you go silent. Instead of arguing, you watch. Instead of explaining, you remember. Every second you don't react, you are reclaiming something they don't want you to have: your emotional sovereignty. And that is where the second law begins. Once you learn to stay silent and see clearly, you are ready for something colder. Not just watching the battlefield, but choosing exactly where it will be fought. Once you've mastered the first law, silent observation, you're ready for the second. Never fight on their battlefield. Always move the fight to yours. Power is never neutral. It lives in the setting. It lives in the timing. It lives in who is watching. Toxic people thrive in one environment: chaos. They are strongest in gossip, in emotional clashes, in rooms full of witnesses they can manipulate. Their battlefield is noise. They will drag you into public arguments at work. They will provoke you in front of family. They will corner you when you're tired, hungry, stressed, when your guard is down and your emotions are loud. Why? Because they don't need to be right. They just need you to look wrong. Machiavelli understood this at the level of nations. No wise ruler fights where the mob holds the advantage. No general brings his troops into a narrow alley where enemies hide on the rooftops. He chooses the terrain. He changes the rules. He decides when the battle starts, and more importantly, when it doesn't. You must do the same on a psychological level. If a toxic person shouts in public, you lower your voice in private. If they attack you in real time, you slow the game down. If they demand an instant reaction, you delay your response. You do not let them choose the moment. You do not let them choose the audience. You do not let them choose the format. For example, if they accuse you in a hallway full of people, you don't defend yourself in the hallway. You say calmly, "I'm not discussing this here," and you walk away. Later, if it serves you, you respond in writing, where every word remains, where emotion is stripped, where truth can't be twisted so easily. If they send you a raging message at midnight, you don't answer at 12:01. You wait until you are calm, clear, and cold. You choose dawn, not chaos. If they try to bait you into a dramatic confrontation when you're drained, you say, "We'll talk when I'm ready," not when they're ready, when you are. This is not avoidance, this is design. You are dismantling their weapons before the fight even begins. They rely on surprise, on momentum, on public spectacle. You remove all three. You move conversations away from crowds. You remove their access to your raw emotion. You stop giving them a live show. Instead, you create conditions where you are at your strongest. Calm, documented, prepared. Think of it this way. If they want mud, choose stone. If they want rumors, bring receipts. If they want emotional chaos, bring cold logic. You are not just dodging traps, you are preventing them from being set. And here is the Machiavellian twist. You never announce this strategy. You don't say, "I'm taking control now." You don't warn them that you're shifting the terrain. You simply stop playing where they invite you. They will feel it before they understand it. Suddenly, their usual tactics don't work. Their audience disappears. Their emotional storms are met with measured responses, or none at all. They will get louder, more dramatic, more desperate. Good. That's proof the terrain is no longer theirs. Because once you've controlled the setting, something powerful becomes possible. You can start using absence itself as a weapon. Not just silence in the moment, but silence as a long-term starvation of what they crave most: And that is the third cold law. You do not defeat a toxic person by fighting them. You defeat them by cutting off their oxygen, your attention. Toxic people do not live on truth. They do not live on justice. They live on one thing only: your attention. That is their oxygen, their currency, their food. Every sigh you make because of them, every sleepless night turning conversations over in your head, every angry reply you type and delete and type again, that is energy leaving you and feeding them. You think you are fighting them. In reality, you are feeding them. That is why the third cold law is so brutal and so necessary. You must starve them, not with half measures, not with symbolic gestures. You must cut off the one resource they cannot live without: your emotional response. Your reactions are their life support. You must learn how to unplug it. Imagine their ego as a fire. As long as you keep throwing wood into it, explanations, justifications, counterattacks, emotional breakdowns, it roars higher, brighter, louder. It doesn't matter whether what you throw in is love, anger, or pain. Fire doesn't care what you feed it. It just burns. Take the wood away, and something almost boring happens. It doesn't explode. It doesn't transform. It simply dies. Now understand this. To a toxic person, you are not a human being in their mind. You are a source of fuel. Your confusion is fuel. Your tears are fuel. Your desperate, "please understand me," is fuel. When you argue with them, you're not correcting them. You're confirming their power. You're saying, "Yes, you can reach me. Yes, you can move me. Yes, you matter enough to disturb my peace." Machiavelli would look you straight in the eye and tell you a cruel little truth. When you fight openly with someone beneath you, you pull them up to your level. You turn them into an equal. A prince who spends his time battling small enemies in public does not look powerful. He looks obsessed. He looks threatened. He gives importance where none is deserved. That is exactly what you do when you keep wrestling with a toxic person. Indifference, on the other hand, is not emptiness. It is a message. It says, "You are not worth a war." To the ego of a toxic person, that is worse than defeat. To lose a fight is painful, but it still proves there was a fight. Indifference erases even that. It says there was never a battlefield, never a rivalry, never a contest. There was only a noise you chose to stop hearing. This is why starving them of attention is not passive. It is a deliberate act of power. You are deciding that your energy will no longer be used as their fuel. You are withdrawing your presence from their internal drama. You are tearing up the invisible contract that says, "Whenever you press this button, I will react." Of course, this is where most people fail. Not because they don't understand the law, but because they are addicted to reaction. Your pride screams, "You can't let them say that." Your anger demands a final word. Your hurt begs for recognition. "I need them to know what they did to me." That is the voice of your ego trying to drag you back into the fire. You must understand, toxic people are experts at creating emotional hooks. They throw accusations that feel unfair, half-true, twisted just enough to make you want to correct them. They attack your identity. You're selfish, you're crazy, you're the problem. Knowing you will want to defend who you are. The more you defend, the deeper you sink. You start explaining yourself, your intentions, your heart, as if they are a judge with the right to decide your worth. Ask yourself, who gave them that power? When you respond to everything, you are saying, "You are important enough that every word you speak must be addressed." That is worship disguised as argument. Starving them means breaking that habit. It means letting things remain uncorrected, letting lies sit in their mouth without rushing in to disinfect them. It means understanding that the truth does not stop being true just because a liar refuses to accept it. Practically, starving them looks like this. You stop replying to every provocation. You stop entering every argument they launch. You stop trying to educate someone who is not confused, but committed to misunderstanding you because it keeps them in control. When their messages grow sharper, shorter, more chaotic, you do not speed up, you slow down, or go completely still. You answer only when necessary, only where it matters, and often not at all. This does not mean you become weak or that you pretend not to see what they are doing. Quite the opposite. You see it clearly. You simply refuse to respond like prey. Prey runs, thrashes, cries out. A hunter watches. A ruler does not chase every insult shouted from below the castle walls. He hears it, perhaps notes it, then turns back to governing his realm. You must become that ruler in your own life. But there is another dimension to this starvation. Toxic people don't just live off your reactions in the present. They also weaponize what you have shared in the past, your secrets, your regrets, your vulnerabilities, your fears. All of this becomes material they can use to pull you back into the game when they feel you slipping away. This is why starving them of attention must be paired with something even colder, starving them of new information. When you stop reacting, they will try another tactic. They will dig up old conversations. They will remind you of your mistakes. They will say, "You once told me you're afraid of being alone," or "You admitted you felt guilty about this." They do this to reopen emotional wounds and force you back into a state where you need to respond, justify, explain, confess. That is why this third law is the bridge to the fourth. You are not only learning to withdraw your emotional energy, you are preparing to lock your inner world behind a mask. Because starving them of attention is not just about silence in the moment. It is about creating a permanent distance between their hands and your heart. Understand how powerful this is. Once you stop feeding them, their stories about you become weaker. They may still talk, they may still gossip, they may still try to provoke, but with no fresh reactions, no fresh information, their version of you becomes outdated. They keep fighting the old you, the one who argued, cried, begged, explained while the new you has already disappeared beyond the reach of their script. They will feel that loss. They will sense something has shifted, even if they can't name it. The hooks they use to pull you close no longer grip as deeply. The buttons they use to push no longer trigger explosions. They will feel the distance like a cold wind. That discomfort is not a sign you are doing something wrong. It is proof that the starvation has begun. The most dangerous thing you can do to a toxic person is not to insult them, not to expose them, not to publicly destroy them. The most dangerous thing you can do is to become unreachable, to become someone who no longer gives them the one thing they cannot generate for themselves, significance through your emotional chaos. And so this third law, at its core, is not about them at all. It is about you. It is about reclaiming ownership over your reactions, your energy, your attention. It is about understanding that your emotional focus is a form of power, and you have been spending it on someone who only knows how to turn it into poison. Once you accept that, something shifts permanently. You no longer feel the same urge to reply because you finally understand the cost. Every reaction is a coin. Every argument is a payment. Starving them is simply refusing to fund your own destruction. From here, the path becomes clearer and colder. If you are going to starve them, you must also protect what they might steal next, your truth. And that is where the fourth law waits. The art of the mask. The decision to never again walk naked into the mouth of a wolf and call it honesty. The fourth cold law is simple to understand. but difficult for good-hearted people to accept. Never hand a toxic person your unguarded truth. Always wear a mask. Most people are raised to believe honesty is always noble, always virtuous, always the right path. But that belief only holds in a world of honorable people. The moment you introduce a toxic mind into the equation, your honesty is no longer a bridge, it becomes a weapon. And not a weapon you hold, but a weapon handed directly to them. Machiavelli understood this with chilling clarity. He wrote that men are not angels, they are wolves, and while a wolf respects strength, it devours openness. What you reveal to a toxic person today becomes the knife they use tomorrow. What you confess becomes the trap. What you vulnerably share becomes leverage. You may think, but if they understood how I feel, maybe they would change. They won't. They will use it. A toxic person never hears your truth the way you intend. Tell them your fear, and they will press on it. Tell them your weakness, and they will store it for later. Tell them your hopes, and they will steal or sabotage them. Tell them your pain, and they will say you are dramatic. Tell them your dreams, and they will laugh or plant doubts to keep you small. To deal with such a person, you must stop giving them material. And the only way to do that is to wear masks, not to deceive good people, but to survive dangerous ones. A mask is not a lie. A mask is a shield. When a soldier wears armor, he is not lying about having soft skin. He is protecting it. When you wear masks around toxic people, you are doing the same, protecting what is human and vulnerable inside you, because they are not worthy of access to it. So, what does the mask look like in practice? It looks like neutrality. It looks like politeness without intimacy. It looks like calm replies with no emotional doorway. It looks like saying, "I'll think about it," instead of confessing what you actually think. It looks like nodding without committing. It looks like listening without revealing. On the inside, you are calculating. On the outside, you are unreadable. Because the truth is this: a toxic person cannot effectively attack what they cannot understand. They search your face for the hurt that tells them where to strike next. They watch your reactions to see which insults sink deeper. They study your voice, your mood, your expressions to locate the weak points. When you mask yourself, you deny them the map. Good people will tell you this is deceit. But ask yourself, is it deceit to hide your gold from a thief? Is it manipulation to keep your intentions private when someone has proven they twist them? Is it dishonest to remain guarded with someone who has never handled your trust with care? The real deceit is believing transparency is owed to everyone. It isn't. The mask gives you two forms of power: protection and control. Protection means they no longer have access to your inner world. They cannot weaponize feelings they do not know. They cannot twist words you never spoke. They cannot predict moves you never announced. Control means you choose what they see. You decide when to appear cooperative, when to appear indifferent, when to appear partially open, while keeping your real motives locked away. They believe they are reading you, but they are reading the version of you that you designed. And illusions, when crafted well, are stronger than truth. This controlled opacity does something else too. It destabilizes them. Without access to your emotional data, they become anxious. They start guessing. They start projecting. Their manipulation becomes sloppy because they don't know what to target anymore. A toxic mind thrives in environments it fully understands. Remove clarity, and they stumble. Meanwhile, behind your mask, you are watching not to admire them, but to time their unraveling. Because a toxic person deprived of emotional influence, begins to reveal their desperation. They raise their voice. They exaggerate their stories. They overplay their hand. They expose themselves to others without realizing it. And here is where the mask becomes more than protection. It becomes a trap. A well-placed mask pushes the toxic person deeper into acting out their nature. The more you appear unaffected, the more extreme they become. They lash out at the wrong people. They reveal their lies too publicly. They contradict themselves. They burn bridges you never had to touch. Their own behavior becomes the blade that cuts them down. And when that happens, you remain untouched because you never showed your real face. That brings us to the true genius of this law. Wearing a mask ensures that when the collapse comes, your hands are clean. You did not attack. You did not expose. You did not fight. You simply concealed yourself and allowed their nature to do the rest. The world will call you wise, calm, composed, and the toxic person will call you cold. But cold is safer than bleeding. This law is not about becoming fake. It is about choosing who earns the right to see the unmasked you. Toxic people have forfeited that privilege. They will meet only your surface, never your depth. And once your truth is hidden, once your emotions are off limits, once your mask is firmly in place, the fifth law emerges naturally. Do not strike them. Let the world strike them for you. Once you have mastered the mask, once your truth is hidden and your emotions are no longer accessible, you are ready for one of the most elegant and ruthless principles in the entire Machiavellian arsenal. Never strike directly when the world can strike for you. This is the fifth cold law. Let others and circumstances destroy the toxic one while you remain untouched. A toxic person carries their downfall within them like a poison they themselves created. Their arrogance, their impulsiveness, their lies, their need for validation, their manipulations, these are not just habits, they are structural weaknesses, cracks in the foundation, flaws that eventually collapse under the weight of reality. You do not need to break them. You only need to stop shielding them from the consequences of who they are. Most people make the fatal mistake of confronting toxicity head-on. They try to expose the manipulator, correct the liar, challenge the narcissist, fight the parasite. They believe naively that if they raise their voice loud enough, the truth will magically prevail. But confrontation rarely destroys toxicity. It only entangles you in it. Machiavelli warns against this. He reminds us that direct conflict with someone beneath you gives them credibility, attention, and opportunity. When you fight them openly, they become a worthy opponent in the eyes of others. When you try to expose them, your emotion makes you look unstable. When you challenge them, you enter a public arena where facts matter less than spectacle. A toxic person thrives on spectacle, so you must do something different. Something colder, something that requires discipline. Step aside, remove your hands, let their nature collide with the world without your interference. Toxic people cannot maintain their mask forever. They eventually show their true face, not because you force them to, but because they cannot help themselves. Their ego demands attention. Their insecurity demands control. Their hunger for admiration pushes them into behaviors that betray their intentions. They overextend, overpromise, overestimate themselves. Your role is not to push them. Your role is simply not to protect them. Consider this. If someone lies constantly, all you need to do is create situations where their lies contradict each other. You do not call them out. You do not shout, "See? I told you." You simply step back and let the inconsistencies reveal themselves. The people who once believed them will begin to question them. Suspicion grows. Trust fractures. Their influence weakens. Or think of someone who manipulates others emotionally. The moment you stop being their primary target, when you disconnect, when you starve them of attention, they must look elsewhere for emotional fuel. They manipulate the wrong person, someone sharper, someone who has less tolerance, someone who won't play the game. And when that person pushes back, the toxic one panics. Their patterns become visible. Their charm wears thin. This is not coincidence. This is physics. What is unstable eventually collapses. There is also the power of timing. When you detach and stay silent, the toxic person grows desperate. They act out more dramatically, exposing their behavior in front of people who were never meant to see it. They make social, professional, or emotional mistakes they once avoided. Their slipping mask becomes the very rope they hang themselves with. And when this moment comes, you are not involved. You have no fingerprints on their downfall. No one can accuse you of plotting or revenge. You simply let gravity do the work, and gravity never fails. But the indirect strike is not only about waiting. It is also about positioning. Position yourself as the calm one, the reasonable one, the quiet one who does not contribute to drama, the person who listens more than they speak, the person who responds only when necessary and with clarity. Others will notice the difference between your steadiness and the toxic one's chaos. People may not understand the full story, but they will feel the truth. They will see who drains the room and who stabilizes it. They will see who sparks conflict and who dissolves it. Human intuition is powerful. The toxic person will expose themselves far more effectively than you ever could. You must also remember, people themselves can become weapons without you lifting a finger. Toxic individuals inevitably offend the wrong person. They manipulate someone who does not tolerate manipulation. They act arrogantly towards someone with more influence than they realized. They try to control someone who cannot be controlled. And when that clash begins, you do not intervene. You do not save them. You do not play mediator. You let the knife they sharpened for others turn back toward them. This is not cruelty. This is justice without blood on your hands. Machiavelli admired leaders who caused enemies to fall without ever drawing their own sword. He saw elegance in victories that required no visible aggression. And that is the genius of the indirect strike. You win without looking like you fought at all. But this law has limits. As refined as it is, as graceful as it feels, indirect destruction only works when time is on your side. There are toxic people whose harm is too constant, too invasive, too deeply woven into your life to wait for them to naturally collapse. There are those whose poison spreads too quickly, those whose chaos reaches too far, those whose presence becomes a threat to your peace, your progress, or your sense of self. When that moment arrives, you must move to the sixth law, the coldest law of all. When removal becomes necessary, cut them out completely and without warning. This is not finesse. This is surgery. A clean, decisive severing. Because there are some poisons that cannot be weakened. They must be eliminated. And hesitation is how they survive. In the end, remember this. Toxic people are not obstacles placed in your path to break you. They are catalysts meant to sharpen you. Every law you've learned is not merely a strategy against them, but a blueprint for your evolution. Silence shapes your discipline. Boundaries forge your strength. Masks refine your wisdom. Detachment becomes your freedom. You do not rise by defeating them in battle. You rise by refusing to play the game at all. When you stop feeding their chaos, their power evaporates. When you stop revealing your truth, their influence collapses. When you step back and let the world expose them, their illusion shatters. And when you finally cut them out, clean and cold, you reclaim the energy they once stole. Carry this forward. Your focus is your fortress. Your calm is your weapon. Your indifference is your victory. Toxic people shrink in the presence of someone who no longer reacts, no longer bends, no longer bleeds for their dysfunction. The true triumph is not noise. It is not revenge. It is becoming unreachable, a presence they cannot disturb, a mind they cannot penetrate, and a life they can no longer touch. That is the ultimate Machiavellian victory.